Hi, I'm Carl Lennartson, and welcome to Music Theory 101, Basic Rhythm. The purpose of this series of videos is twofold. 1. I believe that education should be as free and as accessible as possible. Knowledge should not be kept from those without the capital to acquire it. I hope that these videos will help promote musical education to all, especially those who would not otherwise have the opportunity. 2. To help give a thorough guide of the basics of reading music. Although there are many videos here on YouTube that give a quick rundown in one large video, in my opinion, these are far too fast-paced and give too much information at once to be truly useful. By giving shorter, more manageable chunks, I hope to create an easy-to-understand guide that serves as a reference for people to return to. Now that we've got our goals in mind, let's get down to business. Today, we'll be discussing the basics of rhythmic construction in Western music. Music is not only an art form of sound, it is also of time. Western music is organized through an underlying system of rhythmic pulses. These rhythmic pulses can be fast, slow, or somewhere in between. But they are always constant. The speed of these pulses is known as the tempo, or beats per minute, BPM for short. These pulses or beats can be grouped together to create measures. You might hear measures also referred to as bars. They both mean the same thing, and I'll use both interchangeably. Any number of beats can be grouped together to create a measure. One measure could have 5 beats, another could have 3, and yet another could have 11 beats. All of these could be acceptable groupings. To keep things simple, let's focus on the most common and foundational grouping of beats, 4. Now that we've decided on a grouping of 4 beats per measure, we'll need to come up with different rhythmic durations to fill up each measure. The first rhythmic duration is the whole note. The whole note contains 4 beats. Since our measures only have 4 beats, the whole note will take up the whole bar. 4 measures using only whole notes would look and sound like this. These lines in between our whole notes are what we call bar lines, and help us know when one bar has ended and when another has begun. We can divide the whole note in half to get 2 notes per bar instead of 1. Because the whole note lasts 4 beats and takes up the whole measure, this new note will only take 2 beats and thus half a measure. We'll call them half notes. 2 measures using only half notes would look and sound like this. Just as we did before, we can divide our half notes in half once again to get 4 notes per bar instead of 2. Because the half note takes only 2 beats and half of a measure, this new note will only need 1 beat and 1/4 of the measure. As you may have guessed, because these notes only take up a quarter of the measure, we'll call them quarter notes. A single measure of quarter notes would look and sound like this. We can continue this process of dividing note values in half to get eighth notes, which only take up a half beat and an eighth of the measure, and 16th notes, which take up a quarter of a beat and a 16th of a measure. In fact, this method of dividing in half can go on indefinitely to produce 32nd notes, 64th notes, 128th notes, and so on. However, most music you'll ever see or listen to will only contain whole notes through 16th notes. It's important to understand that music is not just all sound all the time. There's also moments of silence. We represent these moments of silence through rests. Each note value, whole, half, quarter, eighth, 16th, etc., has its own equivalent rest value. These rests function identically to their rhythmic counterparts with the exception that they produce silence rather than sound. Here's an example of alternating half notes and half note rests for 4 bars. Finally, let's discuss how these notes and rests are drawn and visually represented. A whole note is simply an ellipse without the center filled in. For a half note, simply add a vertical stem. If the stem is pointing upward, it will be on the right-hand side like a lowercase d. If the stem is pointing downward, it will be on the left-hand side like a lowercase p. For a quarter note, we fill in the ellipse. For each rhythmic division after, we continue to add flags to the stem. If multiple eighth notes, 16ths, etc. are next to one another, they can be beamed together as shown. For rests, this process is slightly less intuitive. Whole rests are top hats facing downward. Half rests are top hats facing upward. Quarter rests are drawn like this. However, to quickly draw something that is easier to manage and close enough to be intelligible, I use a tilde Z on top of a lowercase c. Eighth notes are represented by a backslash with a leftward facing swoop. For each subsequent rhythm division after this, simply add another swoop. Using this knowledge, we can now create some rudimentary rhythms. Here are 3 4-bar pieces that showcase the rhythmic durations that we've discussed in this video at 3 different tempos. Hey, thanks for watching this video. If you have any questions or comments, please put them down below. If you would like to support more free educational content here on YouTube, please subscribe. Thanks for watching, and as always, have a nice day.